Well, hello there again, friends. Today is 3/29/2022, and today is the Odin Project Vlog Day 82. Um, just as I said in the last video, today I'm going to be going over grid layout 1. It says go back to our CSS exercises repo. You've done these previously, but don't forget that the instructions are in the README file. Do the first exercise in the grid directory. So, just want to caveat one thing that they didn't say here, but it probably goes without saying, probably. But, um, excuse me, um, the repo had updated since I last forked and pulled it down. So you want to go out, hit this link, and go out and make sure that that you have the latest changes. And if you don't, you can fork it, and then there'll be a thing up here that says I think it's like, I can't remember exactly what it said. It was like merge to parent for updates or something like that. Anyway, I knew it was out of date because I didn't have a grid folder on my um, my forked version from previously. So that's how I knew I wasn't up to date. So if you find that you don't have the grid, go ahead and just refork the project. I won't do it again here. I didn't record that part. I probably should have, just for something for you to follow. But basically refork it, and then you'll see up here it'll say something to the effect of if you fork it, you merge it, it'll say that your version is behind the parent. Do you want to update to the parent or something like that? And you'll click the button here, and it will update. So that's probably clear as mud, but that's how you do that. Google it if you need further instruction on that. So let's get started on this. So if you go into the README file here, this is just inside of my version, my forked version of CSS exercises. It says the Holy Grail layout with grid. Now it's time to practice the grid tools we've learned and create a layout that might seem familiar. We're going to make a Holy Grail layout just like the one we created using Flexbox. The difference here is that we won't be relying on Flexbox for this exercise. We'll only be using grid. You'll be able to see the benefits of grid for yourself. And boy, grid's going to get probably a lot more complicated than it is right now, but boy, is it easier. Because I remember when we worked on this before, I think they called it, it was Holy Grail and Hero layout, and doing it with Flex was, I don't have any hair, I'm bald, but if I had hair, I'd be pulling it out. So trying to do it with Flex and grid's so much easier. So hints, you only need to add to the CSS selectors, so you won't need to change the HTML at all. Look back at the creating a grid lessons if you forget how to turn an element into a grid. Excuse me. Tourette's is active. Use fixed track sizes, example pixels for your columns and rows. And this is what it will look like, your desired outcome in the end. So you got your header up here, your nav at the top, sidebar, article in the middle, and footer at the bottom. Get a self-check here. The gap is 15 pixels. The grid has 2 columns. The grid has 4 rows. The second column is 3 times larger than the first. The third row is 5 times larger than the others. The header and footer elements span across both columns. The sidebar elements only span across the first column, and the nav and article elements span across the second column. So basically the self-check's describing the physicality and the physical form of this. So I'm just reading them out to you. Go ahead and pause the video here if you need to read through these again to understand, because I'm probably not going to pop back and forth from Vscode to here, because it's just going to get too messy. I might do it just to show you what the result will look like, but I don't want to keep doing it for the self-checks, because it's going to make the video hard to follow, hard to flow. So with that said, let's hit the editor. So you pull up, I got two panes here. I got the HTML file on the left and the style sheet on the right. The boilerplate is HTML is pretty simple. So we just have a class container, and we have inside of it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 divs. We have a header, a sidebar, a nav, article, and footer class names. And then inside the article, we have 3 paragraph tags with lore ipsum in it. Pretty simple there. So there's that. So basically, they're all in a linear form. I didn't take a picture. I should have took a screenshot of this before I started. But basically, imagine this all just stacked vertically on, not on top of each other, but stacked vertically going down the page in the middle center. That's the way you get it when you start. So so I'm going to go through the style sheet. This shouldn't be a very long video. It's actually pretty simple and straightforward, but I'm going to go through the style sheet from top to bottom on the changes I made, and in regards to the the knowledge check steps we just spoke about a minute ago, and then we'll kind of end it there. So the container is the div class that's wrapping the entire section, basically everything outside of the body tag. So that's where we're going to start our grid, because remember, you want to start your grid at your parent. So we have excuse me, we have grid template columns. These pixels sizes are just, they're not defined by top. They're what I used because of the, and you'll see in a moment, I use these because of the resolution on my monitor. It just made it easier and cleaner to see. So these pixels are just kind of arbitrary numbers, really. But so we have grid template columns. We have 2 columns, one at 450 pixels and the second cell at 1350, and that's because if you recall, the second column has to be 3 times the size of the first. And you have grid template rows, 100 pixels, 100 pixels, 500 pixels, and 100 pixels respectively. And the third one's 500 because the requirements said that the third row needs to be 5 times larger than the others. And so there's your 4 rows, there's your 2 columns, and gap is 15 pixels as defined in the requirements. We come down here to container div, and we don't do anything with it because it's just targeting every div inside there. But I think it might be, it's there just to add the CSS and the padding and the font weight and everything, so that the page looks pretty. As far as Flexbox, or I keep wanting to say Flex. Sorry. As far as grid goes, if you catch me saying Flexbox and I don't correct myself, I'm saying grid. So just bear with me on that. I'm so used to saying, we've been working with Flexbox for so long. Basically, what I was getting at is I think this is kind of a trick because you're not actually going to apply any grid elements to that. So you have your header as your first one at the top. So to get it to span across all the way across the screen, I use grid-column, and then 1. If you remember, that's number 1. That's your first line on your column, because remember, the index numbers don't start at 0; they start at 1. And then this shorthand is the /. I could have did grid column start and grid column end. I just chose to do a shorthand on this to keep it clean and simple. And then span 2 means it's going to span 2 across to complete the entire top 2 rows. So basically, you could just type 2 in here. Span 2 is doing the same thing. Basically, it's just going from grid column line 1 to grid column line 2, because as you know, we only have two columns. So probably over-explained that, but that's how you do that. And actually, that's the same for the footer down here. Grid column 1, span 2. And then going back to the middle, we have sidebar, which is going to be the the sidebar here on the left, and it's going to get a grid column of 1 because that's part of the requirements, was that it's only supposed to take up 1 cell, and then grid row is 2 span 2 because we want the row to start at 2, which is line 2, which is right underneath header, and we want it to flow all the way down to hug up against the footer. So in a moment, I'll navigate away from this screenshot that they give, and I'll show you my my browser, because I've got the F12. I've got DevTools up with the grids enabled, so you can see everything clearly, and all this will make more sense. So grid row 2 span 2, so we're going to span it down 2, starting at 2. So we're going to go to 2 to 4, and that will create that spanning down. Nav, which is the blue bar in the top center, that will be grid column 2, just kind of like the other one. So excuse me. So we're going to start at we're going to have it just consume column 2 starting at line 2. So basically here, and then by default it's going to end over here, because this is actually, I know it's kind of hard to understand without the grid lines, but this is only 1 grid. Remember, because the column was only 2 columns, column 1 and column 2, and then column 2 was 3 times the width, if you remember right from earlier. So up here we've defined it as 3 times the first. So that's why we just put 2 there. Article, exact same thing. Technically, I looked in the solutions at the end after I did this. Technically, you don't need this grid column 2 on article, because article, once you get everything else set up correctly and the footer set up correctly, article will just consume whatever's left over, basically. But just for the sake of ease of and completeness, I define the grid column 2. It doesn't hurt anything, I don't think. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Article P, we just skipped this. Again, it's kind of a trickery for the grid, so to speak. This is just basically providing styling, sexiness for the paragraph tags. It's not useful for us for grid. And then footer is, we already went over that, 1 span 2, which is the exact same thing as the header. So, and that's that. And like I said, I already checked the solution against this, and the only thing that's different is, like I already mentioned, is that they didn't do anything with the article cell, and I did, which again didn't really change anything. So here is what I have. So I've got DevTools up, but I've got it shrunk down here a little bit, so it's not in the way. But I got because I can't get rid of it, because if you get out of it, then it removes the grid lines. So I have grid lines turned on, just as a refresher. If you don't know where that's at and you're using Firefox, it's over here on the right under layout, and you just check this box that says div container overlay grid, and that overlays the grid. So there's your grid. Here's your column 1, column 2, which is triple the size, and then then you have your rows 1, 2, 3, 4, and you remember we defined row 3 as 5 times the size of the other rows, and so that's how you get that. So it's cool to see the lines in there, so that it helps visualize as you're working through it. I highly suggest you turn on grid so that you can see in real time how it's responding, so that you can troubleshoot anything as necessary. And that's it. Had a busy day today, so that's all I was able to get to as far as content. So that rounds out the end of this lesson, and we already went over the knowledge check. So next time we're going over advanced grid properties, and it looks like it's going to be a doozy. I started looking at it and I stopped because I didn't have the mental capacity for it today. It's been a busy day, so um, yeah. So hope you enjoyed the ride tonight and learned a little bit along the way. Please like, share, and subscribe for more comments and for more content, and let me know in the comments how you guys are doing with this first grid exercise and how you feel if it's comparing it to Flexbox, how much easier it is, at least so far. If you feel like it's much easier or not than trying to work with all this with Flex. So with all that said, until next time, see ya.